Beware, empath, for your gift is a double-edged blade. You wander through crowded rooms feeling the secret tremors in another's heart, dipping your fingertips into sorrow that belongs to someone else. You carry their silent screams behind your ribcage, as if you have become the canvas for nameless wounds. What you call compassion becomes the lodestone, drawing you into darker depths, a promise of healing that whispers poison into your veins. As Jung once said, the shadow does not merely hide, it clings and shapes itself around what it touches. You stand at the threshold of an unseen chasm, where the boundary between self and other dissolves like mist at sunrise. When you dare to extend your heart, you risk being consumed by the darkness you sought to understand. After offering solace, you awaken feeling hollow, as though your own essence has been siphoned away. Gratitude returns to you as ash, and empty spaces echo with whispers of deeper hunger. You sense the ancient pact you never signed, trading fragments of your soul for fleeting relief in another's torment. In dreams you glimpse the web of shadows you have woven around yourself. The wound you long to heal whispers back, reminding you that the savior can become the captive, circling ever inward until the self is lost. Feel this warning as a tremor at the base of your spine, a murmur from an older voice that speaks in archetypes and riddles. What if the healer within you is chained by every compassion you have offered? What if each act of mercy carves a hollow in your own heart? Let the echo of Jung's whisper guide you. The greatest wound is not outside, but the one you carve inside in the name of saving another. In this murky borderland, the gift of empathy can become the trap that steals your light. You stand on a timeless stage drawn by unseen forces where the light-shadow dance writes itself upon the loom of your psyche. You are the empath gifted with the uncanny ability to feel the tremor beneath another's composed facade. Opposite you lurks the narcissist, the archetype of radiant self-absorption, whose brilliance blinds them to the suffering they ignite. The interplay of these polarities draws you into an ancient ritual drama. You sense the pull of the shadow twisting your yearning to heal into a labyrinth of self-doubt. In that chrysalis between light and dark, you glimpse the unspoken covenant. Without your compassion, the narcissist's mirror would shatter, and without their brilliance, your empathy would have no stage upon which to play out its sacred tragedy. Beneath your compassion lies a wound first cut in childhood's unguarded hours. You learn resilience by absorbing the pain of silent parents, by soothing the fears of siblings too young to name their tears. As Jung once said, each wound carries an echo of the collective weaving you into an ancestral tapestry of sorrow and sacrifice. The healer archetype awakens within you, sprouting wings forged from grief, yet you remain tethered by the memory of that first unbearable loss. Your unconscious mind scripts an endless replay to heal another, is to stitch your own soul back together, even as you bleed into each life you touch. In the silent theater of your dreams, you enact dramas without beginning or end. You become the vessel into which others pour their stories, the chalice for unspoken agonies. By moonlight, you feel the old pull of the narcissistic flame, the irresistible glow that demands to be reflected. Through your attunement, you carry their image back into consciousness, a living portrait of unmet needs and unseen scars. You do not notice how your own face blurs at the edges until one dawn you awaken uncertain whose reflection trembles in the mirror. This is the secret choreography, two archetypes bound in an inexorable waltz, each step determining the next breath of your becoming. You feel the undertow of projection pulling at your soul. The shadow you perceive in another is the fragment you refuse to own in yourself. In response, you pour tenderness into that darkness, hoping to transmute it into light. But the alchemy falters, for light alone cannot illuminate the depths where unacknowledged fears lie. You become the emissary for unclaimed shadows, carrying them like a torch into every relationship, every quiet moment of self-reflection. And yet, the flame flickers. Your energy wanes as you navigate the opposing currents of compassion and self-effacement without a compass. In this dialectic of giver and receiver, the archetypal roles repeat across centuries of myth and dream. You hear the echo of Prometheus stealing fire only to be bound and tormented, the echo of Orpheus descending only to look back and lose what he most desires. Your psyche scripts these same tragedies beneath the quiet of everyday life. When the wound you nurse demands to be noticed, It visits you in cryptic symbols, a shattered mirror, a dying rose, an empty cradle under a full moon. As Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You sense this invitation resonating in the depths of your blood, calling you to walk into the very heart of your own shadow. You are neither only the healer, nor only the wounded. You are the crucible, in which these forces converge, the sacred threshold where pain transforms into knowing. The collective unconscious hums beneath your ribs, reminding you that the archetype is not a mask you wear, but a living pulse you carry alive, sacred and demanding recognition. And so you stand poised at the source where inner wounds and unconscious dynamics fuse into your essential nature. You feel the weight of ancestral sorrow and the promise of hidden gifts awaiting reclamation. The web of light and dark pulses with possibility urging you to claim both your compassion and your boundaries. The mythic currents swirl, carrying you toward an encounter with the self that precedes healing. In this realm of archetypes, you glimpse the blueprint for your own individuation, waiting for the choice to reclaim what has been scattered across the mirror of others. You feel the slow turning of a cosmic wheel beneath your feet, an inexorable pull, drawing you toward another's luminous flare. You step into the swirling dance of opposites, where your empathic heart beats in rhythm with the narcissist's golden drum. Their brilliance calls to you like a moth, drawn to flame, promising warmth even as it threatens to scorch your wings. As Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." You sense this alchemy unfolding before your inner eye, a ritual as old as myth, where light and dark entwine in a ceremony without end. In this sacred theatre you become both spectator and participant. You see the narcissist's mask of invincibility crack under your gaze of compassion. Their hidden void trembles as you offer understanding, yet each gesture of warmth only deepens the cavern they hide within. They need your gaze to confirm their existence, and in giving it freely, you feed the ritual flame. You cannot resist the lure, for you are bound to complete the play. Without your presence, the performance collapses into silence. Across time, your psyche knows this choreography, the phoenix that rises only to burn the snake, that sheds skin only to reveal the void beneath. And so you spin together in this mirror dance. When they speak, you listen not only with ears, but with sinew and bone, feeling every inflection, as though it were an echo in your own mind. Their laughter becomes a chorus within your chest, and their sorrow seeps into your marrow. You breathe in their unspoken needs, exhaling longing for unity. Each moment is charged with electric tension, as if the cosmos itself holds its breath to watch whether you will merge completely or shatter apart. This is not mere relationship, but the enactment of a ritual drama, a ceremony of projection where your shadow and their light flicker like candles in a darkened hall. In the flicker of that hall, you sense the archetypal collision that shapes your destiny. You are drawn to the archetype of the self as healer, while they embody the archetype of the shadow as seducer. In your unconscious mind, these figures dance on a stage of collective myth. The maiden and the beast, the saint and the trickster, the light bringer and the dark keeper. You feel their stories unspooling beneath the veneer of daily life, as if your heartbeat echoes a chant heard in ancient groves. Your psyche remembers every iteration of this play, and it yearns for a different ending even as it repeats the same script. All around you, symbols flicker a rose with thorns sharper than steel, a chalice half filled with wine that tastes of tears, a mirror fractured by a single blow, yet still reflecting a whole world. You recognize these as hieroglyphs of your soul's ritual. The rose is the promise of beauty and the sting of betrayal. The chalice is the vessel of communion and the well of sorrow. The mirror is the lure of self-recognition and the trap of projection. Each symbol presses against the surface of your consciousness, inviting you deeper into the mystery of this sacred enactment. As the dance intensifies, you feel your boundaries dissolve. You no longer know where your pulse ends and their heartbeat begins. Your wound and their wound converge, weaving a tapestry of pain, so exquisite it seems to pulse with its own life. The ritual demands a sacrifice not of blood, but of identity. You taste the sweetness of merging and the bitterness of losing yourself. The cosmos watches as you teeter on the edge of union and annihilation, knowing that only through this collision can a new shape be born. Yet you sense a hidden pattern beneath the chaos, a geometry of polarity that reveals wholeness. Light and shadow circle each other like dancers in a sacred rite, each turn a secret language whispering of unity. You feel echoes of Jung's words. In all chaos, there is a cosmos in all disorder, a secret order resonating in the tremor of your soul. The ritual is not merely a tragedy, but a chance for integration, a chance for the archetypes to reveal their joined face. You perceive the possibility that this dance need not end in fragmentation, but could forge a new emblem of self. In that moment of suspended breath, you glimpse the portal between worlds. You see that the ritual drama you enact is also the alchemical process of transformation. The narcissist's mirror, when held in your hands, could become the philosopher's stone, if only you dared to see the shadow within it as your own. You realize that the other's light is but the reflection of a light you carry, yet refuse to claim, and their darkness is but a mirror to the darkness you have never embraced. The tension swells, and a hush falls over the stage of your psyche. You stand in the center of the cosmic labyrinth, the nexus where polarities meet. In your chest, the rose and chalice and mirror merge into a single symbol, an Ouroboros consuming its tail, the sign of infinite return. You feel your heart expand, not to enfold another, but to contain the entire ritual of light and shadow. You sense the possibility of stepping out of the dance, not as an escape, but as an ascent to a higher pattern, where interplay becomes harmony. And there, in that suspended space, you recognize the sacred truth that the ritual drama of opposites is the heartbeat of your own individuation. The dance continues, but you no longer merely spin in its orbit. You become the conductor of its music. In the echo of Jung's thought, you hear the call to make the unconscious conscious, to weave the light and shadow into the tapestry of your wholeness. You stand poised to emerge, not as merely the empath or the savior, but as the sovereign bearer of both flame and abyss, ready to write a new myth upon the silent stage of your soul. You move through the world bearing the mantle of the healer, radiating warmth like an ember in the night. Yet each spark you offer ignites expectations, unspoken debts you never agreed to repay. You begin to wear the armor of benevolence as though it were your own flesh, until your true shape fades beneath its luminous weight. When you rescue another, you taste relief, only to find a hollow echo where your own voice once thrummed. The line between saving and suffocating blurs, and you wonder if compassion has become your captor. In the silence of twilight, your dreams speak in coded symbols. A raven picks at a wounded lion, its talons slipping into flesh that cries out beneath the moon's pale gaze. You awaken with your heart pounding, unsure whose pain you inherit. Night after night, the image returns, a warning etched into the theater of sleep. You shake the damp residue of fear from your mind, but the omen lingers like a stubborn fragrance. To pour yourself into another is to pour away your own essence. As Jung once said, "You cannot love what you do not know of yourself, yet you lose yourself in admiration for another's glow, mistaking their brilliance for the path to your own worth. You become a silhouette against their blazing light, convinced your purpose is to be the shadow that completes their form. You speak in soft assurances, offer your heart on an altar of silent devotion, until you can no longer remember the contours of your own desires. Signs of over-identification weave themselves into your daily life. You find your energy wilting, as if drawn through 1,000 tiny holes in your aura. Conversations end with exhaustion ringing in your bones. Your generosity becomes a currency you spend until you stand penniless in your own needs. When you look into the mirror, the face that stares back seems borrowed, as though sculpted to reflect someone else's longing. You feel the pull of projection even now, as if the world's unspoken needs weigh upon you like a cloak too heavy to bear. Each plea for help is a whisper in your ear, seductive and relentless. Save me, fix me. And you acquiesce because the first time you heard that plea, it was your own voice, echoing from a cavernous childhood silence. You repeat the pattern unconsciously, believing you are the vessel of salvation, unaware that you have become the vessel of someone else's story. Dreams offer more subtle warnings. A river that runs backward, carrying stones upstream. A candle that burns at both ends until only a puddle of wax remains. You sense the message in your bones when energy flows against its nature. It fractures the vessel that holds it. But in daylight you dismiss these portents as whimsy, forging ahead into the undertow of empathy that demands sacrifice. You invoke the healer's code in every encounter, uttering phrases you learned from old books and whispered traditions. But under the words you hear another mantra: the suppression of desire, the denial of hunger, the erasure of the self. You begin to believe that the measure of your worth is the depth of your sacrifice. Each yes becomes a lock that binds you more tightly to a promise you cannot keep to give up your own boundaries in service of an illusory ideal. Then you awaken to a more subtle horror, the realization that the savior can become the saboteur. By seeking to heal the world, you have wounded yourself. By filling another's emptiness, you have starved your own well. The paradox of your gift reveals itself. Empathy can become self-erasure when tethered to unexamined guilt, and guilt like ivy grows overnight across the walls of the heart, until the window through which your own light shone is suffocated by green and shadow. In the stillness that follows this revelation, you hear a voice older than your own, the whisper of the true self, not the persona you have fashioned as the healer. It asks no questions of others, demands no sacrifice. It simply knows that wholeness is not found in self-forgetting, but in self-recognition. You glimpse this self in the transitory space between breaths, in a flash of clarity in the mirror of your own gaze. What if compassion did not demand your emptiness as payment? What if empathy could flourish in the rich soil of boundaries rooted in the soil of your own being? In that thought, a tremor of hope wakes within you. You sense the contours of a new way, a way where you neither vanish in service nor build walls of indifference, but hold the space between self and other with sovereign grace. And in that sacred hush, you realize that the greatest danger was never in feeling too deeply, but in forgetting who you are beneath the tides of feeling. The river may run backward, the candle may burn at both ends, but you, empath, can learn to walk beside both current and flame without being consumed. You can feel without drowning, hold without losing. In that balance, you discover a sanctuary, the home where your compassion and your boundaries meet in luminous harmony. Beyond the collapse of self that once haunted you, you sense a hidden doorway at the edge of your awareness, shimmering like dawn after an endless night. You have carried another's sorrow pressing into your chest, familiar with the ache of unspoken debts that never cease. Yet now, beneath those heavy stones, a crack appears glowing with possibility, a portal shaped by the meeting of wounds and longing, fear and revelation. You stand before it, your heart neither heavy nor light, but alive with a quiet certainty that something essential awaits. You remember the tides of empathy that once swept your boundaries away, carrying you into currents of responsibility you did not choose. Compassion's flame both illuminated your path and scorched the edges of your being, forging channels in your psyche through which transformation might flow. Feel the tremor beneath your skin as you recognize that this is no ordinary escape, but the crucible where your true essence is refined. You sense a gentle vibration beneath your feet, the resonance of untold stories ready to unfold. A subtle thrill courses through your veins as you glimpse the mosaic of your life rearranging itself. In the hush of that threshold, you hear an inner voice freed from obligation. It is the voice of your deeper self that neither begs nor commands but simply calls you home. It speaks in images, a seed breaking through frozen earth, a wounded bird testing its first flight, a river discovering clarity where it meets the sea. You realize that transformation is not a prize granted in gratitude, but the natural unfolding of a life awakened to its own mystery. What if this passage did not demand sacrifice, but invited your full presence? As Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You feel that truth resonate through every pulse. Picture yourself stepping into the portal with eyes wide open to both your wounds and your untapped power. Carry all the kindness that once blinded you and every silent sorrow you gathered in childhood's shadows. Yet now you offer them not upon an altar of self-erasure, but as lanterns to guide you through the vast unknown. Awareness blossoms like a strange flower in the cave of your soul. Roots of self-compassion unfurl into the soil of your being, drinking nourishment forgotten long ago. You taste a sweetness in the air you did not know you craved, the fragrance of self-recognition. You understand at last that no iron barred this door, but vows made from fear. Now with sovereign clarity you unmake those vows and breathe into the spaces they once filled. The journey will not be without tempest. You may encounter shapes you once feared, the silent rage you buried beneath kindness, the grief you disguised as duty, the yearning you masked as guilt. They rise like spectres in corners you thought were empty, yet each is simply an emissary of your own psyche calling to be known. When you gather them into the warmth of your gaze, they transform from threats into teachers softening and revealing their hidden faces. In that crucible you discover that boundaries are not prisons, but the contours of self-love. Saying no does not sever compassion. It defines the garden where your energy can bloom. Self-care is not indulgence, but the bedrock of your capacity to feel. Each limit you set is an act of liberation, a declaration of your right to rest and to stand firm. The doorway is wide enough to hold your generosity and your sanctuary. A tide of warmth fills your chest as you cross the threshold. You enter a chamber of stillness where echoes of the past whisper like distant thunder. Here your empathic gift becomes a source of strength instead of a drain. You feel intuition pulse with clarity, no longer entangled in another's shadows. The mirror of your soul reflects the full spectrum of your being, compassion and sovereignty, vulnerability and resolve. Time bends in this liminal realm, stretching and contracting like breath. You glimpse futures where you move through relationships as a dancer who knows both motion and rest. You sense potential thrumming through your veins, as though your spirit recalls a melody long forgotten. You realize that compassion need not demand your disappearance, but can flourish alongside firm boundaries. So you linger in the doorway, neither captive to old sacrifice, nor seduced by new illusions. You breathe deep, and remember the truth that birthed your empathic heart to feel is not to vanish, but to discover your own light. You stand between worlds, holding your wounds like sacred relics, aware that transformation is not a distant destination, but the living miracle of your unfolding. In this moment, you become the alchemist of your own soul, turning grief into stardust and sorrow into song. At last you step fully into the emerging self, leaving behind the echo of the wounded servant, and rising as the architect of your own wholeness. The portal fades behind you, its edges glowing like embers. You carry its light into the world not as a debt owed, but as a gift freely given from a heart awake to its own power. Now you emerge from the crucible of your own making, your spirit tempered by both fire and abyss. In this sacred moment you stand not as the wounded servant, but as the sovereign bearer of your own flame. The air around you shimmers with possibility, and you sense that every step you take echoes with the gravity of newfound authority. You remember the long nights when compassion felt like chains, when each act of mercy carved hollows into your soul. Yet here in this dawn of self-recognition, those chains lie broken at your feet. You see now that your empathy was never a weakness, but a gateway, an invitation to know the depths of both darkness and light, and to claim the full spectrum of your being. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You taste the truth of those words in your bones, feeling the tremor of alignment between your inner world and outer steps. No longer do you scatter your essence in the hope of soothing another's ache. You hold your energy like a precious resource, directing it with intention. Boundaries rise not as walls, but as elegant contours defining the sanctuary of your heart. You stand at the confluence of compassion and sovereignty, understanding that love need not dilute itself to be potent. Your heart has learned to bloom within borders, petals unfurling toward truth instead of sacrificial oblivion. You feel the warmth of self-compassion radiate outward, a beacon that draws others to you without demanding their debts. In this balanced radiance, you discover that connection thrives when both selves stand whole side by side, offering presence without vanishing. The sacredness of saying no pulses through your veins like a clarion call. You taste its strength on your tongue, a flavor of liberation you once feared. Saying no to demands that whittle away at your core becomes a profound gesture of self-love. You honor your limits as the very scaffolding that supports your capacity to give, ensuring your flame burns steadily rather than flickering out. In this luminous field of awareness, you sense the true architecture of your empathic gift. It is a cathedral built upon the bedrock of boundaries, each foundation stone laid by a clear intention to protect your sanctuary. Your compassion becomes a sacred offering rather than an open wound. You release the old compulsion to rescue at any cost, understanding that the most potent healing arises from presence rather than intervention. You hold space for others not as a vessel emptied by their needs, but as a steward whose cup remains full. You feel the resonance of your own archetype shifting. No longer solely the healer bound by unspoken contracts, you emerge as the magician of your own psyche, weaving your threads of light and shadow into a tapestry of wholeness. The ritual dramas of old still whisper at the periphery of your mind, but you answer not with unconscious surrender, but with conscious choice. You carry your wounds as talismans, each mark a testament to your journey, and a source of compassionate insight that serves rather than consumes. Now in the fullness of your emerging self, you invite transformation to flow through you without fear. You recognize that saying yes from this place is an affirmation of your power, not a surrender of it. Your empathy becomes a lens of clarity, honing the light of awareness rather than scattering it. You stand confident in your right to rest, to guard your energy, to honor the sacred geometry of your limits. In this equilibrium, your presence radiates a magnetic harmony that draws kindred souls who respect both your kindness and your autonomy. And so you step into the world anew, armed with the sovereignty to protect your heart and the openness to share it. You carry the alchemical wisdom that true power lies not in endless giving, but in the grace of balanced exchange. Your boundaries are not barriers, but radiant gates that signal to the world here stands an empath who knows her worth, who feels deeply and rests firmly, who says no with reverence and yes with full presence. In this empowered closure, you glimpse the secret of your individuation, that the self you reclaim becomes the source of your greatest gift.